Us to talk and help break down this political stalemate and the shutdown, the far-reaching implications thereof, is Joseph Williams, former senior editor at U.S. News and World Report. Joseph, good to see you again.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
We are several days now, or a couple days into this shutdown, no end in sight. Republicans are basically saying it is the Democrats gumming up the works by saying there's a nonpartisan measure out there to ensure funding just sitting there, just needs to be approved, and that they will revisit Democratic demands to readdress health care funding in the U.S., but the Dems are buying it, and they believe the GOP will not negotiate in good faith. Let me get you to weigh in on this. Your thoughts on this?
Well, basically, it's hard to see how either the impasse gets solved, mainly because the Democrats have some legit receipts here. I mean, number one, that a lot of these healthcare subsidies relate to the Affordable Care Act. That's something that the Republicans have voted more than 70 times over the last 10, 12 years to repeal. So that's item number one in reason why the Democrats feel like they can't negotiate in good faith with the Republicans. Number two is the guy in the White House, Donald Trump, who very much is hard to predict. He's very capricious. You don't know which way he's going to go, and that's even for members of his caucus. So it could be that the Republicans sit down with Democrats to negotiate in good faith without the leverage of a shutdown, only to have Trump sweep in and say, no, no deal. He doesn't want anybody to negotiate with the Democrats. And the deal is off, and the Democrats walk away with nothing. I mean, you don't even have to look very much further than what your correspondents have reported on the fact that the White House is canceling funding projects in Democratic states and in Democratic districts. That's not necessarily a sign of anybody who's taking it seriously, and certainly not a sign that the President of the United States wants to negotiate in good faith with the opposition.
Yeah, Joe, do you think that the President is trying to weaponize this shutdown by threatening to shut down projects in 16 blue states, 2 red states?
It's hard to argue otherwise. I mean, you just kind of look at the pattern. Troops in Chicago, troops in Los Angeles, threats of troops to send to Baltimore and Memphis and other places. Those were all blue cities. Secondarily, it's not clear that he's got the legal pretense to cancel these projects. The problem there is the cancellation happens, the states sue, and it takes years or months or however long it takes only to end up in the Supreme Court. And in between that time, you have workers who don't have jobs, you have projects that are half completed, and the Supreme Court may or may not side with the plaintiffs here. We've seen it a couple of times where lower court judges have very vociferously sided with plaintiffs against the White House, and only to have the Supreme Court sweep in and say, well, no, presidential power says that he gets to do that. So I think even the threat of firing federal workers is a bit of weaponization here, because that's not necessarily tied to the shutdown. These workers aren't getting paid already. They won't get paid throughout the shutdown, and firing them after the government is closed looks plainly like a pretext. But you ask the White House and they're saying, well, no, this is all the fault of the Democrats. It's very interesting messaging, and the question is whether or not it's going to work.
Yeah, and a lot of attention will focus on who is going to bear the brunt of the shutdown. I want to talk about that, but first, which federal workers and services are the most affected right now?
Well, right now you're looking at all the federal parks, you're looking at payroll, you're looking at the agencies that look after food safety, the FTC, the FDA, any of the lettered agencies, the USDA with women, infants, and children, they are responsible for managing that program. So it's the invisible infrastructure of the American economy. Now, these people won't get checks and it won't hit right away, but over time, if we have a crisis, over time, if we see a plane crash, or if we see somebody get through TSA with a weapon, that's going to bring it into real sharp relief for people as to why the government matters and why this shutdown is never a good thing.
Yeah. And your thoughts on the blame game? I don't want to get too much into that because it's really not the important issue right now.
Well, it still matters, though. I mean, I think that leverage of the shutdown will either wax or wane depending on the first round of polling. Early polls say that the Republicans are bearing the brunt of it, but the Democrats aren't that far behind. The blame game is everything in Washington right now. Even though it doesn't matter to you or I, certainly it matters of whether or not two parties can come to the table. who wins messaging. You saw Donald Trump send out some memes that were kind of, frankly, racist and ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they are getting people talking about him and about what he wants out of the shutdown. The Democrats are struggling to counter that. They don't really have a strong message. Healthcare, absolutely important, but not something that hits home, or at least won't hit home until people see their premiums on their paychecks skyrocket.
Yeah, and I saw a recent poll that showed that the American public right now thinks less of Democrats than they have in decades. And I also want to point out that the longest government shutdown history was Trump's first tenure in office. But with all that information, what kind of impact, economic impact, are we looking at if this drags on for weeks rather than days?
You're looking at serious damage to the economy. I mean, you don't need to look any further than today, where we didn't get the jobs report. You've got a lot of businesses that depend on finding out whether or not the economy is healthy, finding out if hiring is happening. That didn't come out today. That's a problem. Problem number two, if Vogt threatens to fire all these workers and he follows through on those threats, suddenly you're going to have 100,000 people on the unemployment rolls. Unemployment will tick up. You have women going further and further without aid for their children. That's going to drive up costs to the emergency room, put pressure on food banks. The general economy overall, you're going to see slowdowns when people, manufacturers, real estate companies who depend on the government to regulate and monitor and approve certain deals, those deals don't get done, the economy continues to slow. You couple that with the ongoing tariffs, and you're looking at significant damage in the short term that may or may not be able to reverse if both parties come to the table. So I think we're looking at two things. The first are the economic numbers, which whatever's left out there, we can look at and kind of gauge where the shutdown is. The second thing you're looking at is the unemployment numbers. And the third thing you're looking at are the polling, who's getting the blame for the shutdown.